Don't forget to like, comment, share and subscribe, and do consider supporting the channel via PayPal or Patreon. You'll find the links in the video description. It's time to catch up with events in Norway chess, and we're looking at the game between Magnus Carlsen and Teimour Radjabov. Neither player has had a blistering start. Carlsen has drawn 2 classical games, and then in the Armageddon game that follows he won one and lost one, and Radjabov has lost a classical game. He won one Armageddon game. So anyway, both players looking to kickstart their tournament. Interesting that Radjabov is actually playing in Norway chess, because the candidates tournament follows pretty soon after. I think it's difficult. You know, he doesn't know how much energy to give at the board. You know, is he going to tire himself out for the candidates? And yeah, opening preparation, he doesn't want to give too much away as well. Anyway, Carlsen with white playing the Catalan. This is the opening that he played in the World Championship match. We're going to see a little echo of that here. And Carlsen has used this in his tournaments after that as well. So he's seeing a little World Championship dividend with the work he's put in. So Catalan main line, a6, the normal move here, or the most popular move. But b5 has become quite trendy, and this is the move that Nepo played in the World Championship match. So black hangs onto this pawn. And if you remember, Carlsen played knight e5 in the match, and it led to a really, really complicated game. But, well, now that's out in the open, too risky to repeat for Carlsen. Black should be okay there. And instead, Carlsen goes back to the classical a4. So this pawn move seeks to undermine the pawn on c4. And the old move here was just b4. This is still complicated, but it's found that white should be better after knight fd2. Okay, that's another story. But bishop b7, and this is the modern way to play the position, involving a pawn sacrifice. And of course, this is a computer idea. So pawn takes pawn. I mean, at first glance, this looks ridiculous for black. You just give away a pawn. White should not play like this. It's a nice little trick. It's the queen. But pawn takes pawn, knight takes, queen takes c4. Now, white is a pawn up. However, just for a moment, black gets a lot of piece activity. Now, I mean, realistically, the summit of black's ambitions here is just to draw this game. Black takes down the centre, and white is left with this lone pawn here. But it is very difficult to get that pawn going when black is so active. But, there have been quite a few games where basically white has neutralised black's activity, but this pawn has been lost and it's just drifted towards a draw. So this is a very reliable line, but Carlsen didn't come to this game empty-handed. He played bishop f4, which, well, is a new move. I mean, it's not... It looks like a pretty normal developing move, but if you look at this position with an engine, you'll see that bishop f4 is not the first choice. Previously, we've seen bishop e3, for example, a game between Giri and Nepo, went bishop e3, and these are the machine's first choice moves. We know that Giri is very well prepared, and he did this. And yes, white is slightly better here. That's still the extra pawn, but you can see that with the 2 bishops, active pieces, making anything of this position is very difficult for white. And Giri didn't succeed. He drew that game. But Carlsen does something a little bit different. Bishop f4. Still, black has a lot of activity here. And here, Radjabov plays knight e c5. I'm sure Carlsen would have prepared this, but I wonder whether it might have been a better practical shot for black to play like this. I mean, this is a forced sequence. Basically, if king takes bishop, then queen takes. So this is a forced line. Knight b4, takes, and rook f3. So white is still a pawn up. Of course, Radjabov would have considered this, and I'm absolutely sure this was in Carlsen's preparation. But it just feels like this is hard for white to control when the king is a little exposed. These pawns are split, but it's easy to say this with hindsight, and who knows. As I said, Carlsen, I'm sure, would have prepared for this position and is still slightly better here, according to the machines, but who knows from a human point of view. Maybe a better shot for black. Okay, let's come back to the game. So Radjabov played knight ec5. Also, I mean, a reasonable move, exchanging off these light square bishops. And that brings the queen into the game. So you can see that black has nice activity here. And, this is white's extra pawn. Now, bringing that forward is going to be extremely difficult. Let's see what happened. Bishop e3. So that seems reasonable, protecting the knight. Queen b7, the queen ducks back. Just lining up on the b-pawn. Knight d2. So that knight covers a lot of important squares, actually. Probably better than moving to c3, but it's that kind of judgment which is very difficult. Rook a c8, looking opposite the queen, which goes to b1. That's not such a bad square. I mean, it has to keep protecting the b pawn, but also covers e4. Knight b4. So black's still looking very active, and very hard to see how white is sort of breaking free here, or making any progress. Carlsen's next move is excellent, and is the computer's first choice. I doubt very much whether he was still in preparation. I'm sure he's beyond that. So he was having to work things out for himself, and I think this is a really good move. Knight 4 to f3. Not an easy one to spot. So why is this move important? Well, okay, let's suppose that white plays a move like rook c1. Looks reasonable, bringing the rook into action. Then knight d5 is very embarrassing for that bishop. So knight f3 just gives the bishop a little room. Queen b5 hits the e2 pawn, rook e1. So it still feels very passive for white. Black building up nicely. Now, okay, I'll hand it over to you. How would you play here if you had white? There you go. It's slurp tea time. Cheers. How would you play if you had white? And I think, these next moves from Carlsen really show the kind of diligence that's needed to play this kind of position. King f1. Again, you will find this is the computer's first choice in the position. Not an easy move to make. You sort of think, well, do I have enough time to make this move? The idea is you just protect this pawn, and then that'll enable the rook to move to a more active position. So this is not a mate in two combination. It's not a tactic to win the thing. It's just slowly unraveling. h6. Well, a useful move, but kind of an indication that black's pieces have come so far. But how do you make further progress? It's actually not easy at all. It also shows that basically the way that Carlsen has set up, there are no real weaknesses in white's position. Bishop f8. Knight e4. So slowly Carlsen is unwinding. Knight b3, this still looks quite scary, but pair of rooks exchanged. Knight c3, the queen goes back to b7. Right, your move again. How would you play here if you had white? White to play. This is another very interesting moment in the game, actually. The obvious move is rook a7. But this would lose to knight d2 check. A lovely trap. This was actually pointed out by a Norwegian player who the IM that actually drew with Carlsen in the Norwegian League game a few months ago. Guy Osmo. And yeah, he spotted this. If knight d2, then, well, bishop takes, then obviously queen takes rook. If knight takes, then queen h1 is mate. And if the king moves, then queen takes rook, and again, that wins material. Black wins. Nice little trap there. But Carlsen carefully advanced the rook to a4. It's actually safe on that square. Knight d5. Knight takes, queen takes. So, well, little by little, we've had some piece exchanges. White is still safe. So white is getting closer to getting somewhere. Carlsen plays king g2. Queen c6. Now the rook goes to the 7th rank. Now that is already quite significant. You know, this potentially is a target for white. You know, later on with knight e5. Obviously there's a pin at the moment. But, you know, white is getting closer. g5. Yeah, well, Radjabov realizes he needs some activity. So this is a threat. But queen d3 hits the knight. So no time for g4. The knight comes back. So, you know, that's already significant. The blockade has been lifted. Queen c4 covers the g4 square and starts pinning. Queen b6 hits the rook. Queen a2 maintains the rook on h7. And white is definitely getting somewhere. This is a little bit uncomfortable for black with that pin. Now, if queen b5 stepping out of the pin, then knight e5. Finally, white gets in this fantastic knight move. And yeah, the counter-attack starts, basically. That's really unpleasant. And the queen plays its role as well. So queen c6 pins. b4. Finally, that pawn advances. Knight drops to d7. b5. Excellent little tactical finesse to advance the pawn. If queen takes, then knight d4. And the queen can't maintain protection of the knight. Yeah, so can't come back to c6. If queen e5, then rook takes d7. So b5, queen d6. And now Carlsen's final move, queen a6. Here, Radjabov resigned. It is completely hopeless. I mean, you know, queen takes, pawn takes. That pawn is just going to roll through. And yeah, there's this attack on f7 as well, just to add to the pain. And rook d8, queen b7. I mean, it's very unpleasant. I can understand why Radjabov didn't want to have anything more to do with this position. It's really horrible. You know, we're going to see something like this. A queen exchange will be hopeless, and if this, then now it's time for the counter-attack on the king. And there's just a complete overload here. So, well, I mean, what a brilliant game by Carlsen. He displayed extreme diligence in converting that tiny advantage to victory. I mean, really, this is absolute top-class chess. Not the most spectacular game, but we have seen this kind of performance from Carlsen in the past, and it is, just a superb level of performance actually. Interesting to see. His work on the Catalan is obviously still continuing and evolving as well. That is a World Championship dividend. So let me just give you the scores at the moment. Out in the lead, we have Vishwanathan Anand, who's leading with 7.5. They have a complicated points scoring system, but basically Anand has won 2 classical games, drawn another, and then he's won an Armageddon, so he has 7.5. Wesley So playing extremely well with 6. Carlsen now has 5.5. I'll dip in and out of Norway chess. I won't have time to cover every round, but I will hopefully be able to cover the most important moments of the tournament. So thanks for watching.